So experiencing water through the senses and nature journaling exploration, that's what I'm going to take you through today. So what is nature journaling? For those who aren't quite sure what it really essentially is just closely observing nature with a mindset of curiosity and wonder and ready to see things in a new way. And we capture that on paper. And we do this using words, pictures, and numbers. And the most rich, interesting journal pages use a combination of words, pictures, and numbers, and they get the brain thinking in different ways. And that's why, you can capture different things with words than you can with pictures. And I'll explain a little more when we're doing some nature journaling together. So why do we nature journal? The first and most obvious one is to connect with nature. And we pay close attention to nature. When you pay close attention to something, you deepen your relationship with it. And I put here on the slide "and the self," because nature journaling is a very, very reflective practice, and it definitely has elements of mindfulness. And I use it particularly for self-care because it's a very nourishing practice for the self as well. So we can know our local environment. We can nature journal in the backyard and get to know it so well and intimately in this way. We can see the rhythms of the seasons. We can get to know how the garden works or the local park. And it's a wonderful practice for citizen science because you can track the birds as they're migrating through your area or anything like that. Any way of, any reason why you might want to document what's going on in your environment is a wonderful thing to do in your nature journal. It deepens observation. So when we start to nature journal, we realize that we can deliberately deepen the process of learning to see. We have this mindset that we can see something in a new way. And when you go into that, you realize this is a muscle you can start to exercise, this sort of ability to look and see deeply. And carrying on from that, it expands your curiosity. We talk often about deliberate curiosity, intentional curiosity. And once you start learning to be curious about the world, you realize that this whole world is infinitely fascinating. And so that's the reason I put down there curiosity, wonder, joy, because I feel like it follows this trajectory. So when we drop into this place of intentional curiosity, we are tapping into this feeling that brings wonder. Like when you're curious about something, like I said, you realize this world is full of wonder. And when you're living in that place of awe and wonder for this world that's around us, it's just a joyful, joyful experience. So how to nature journal? One really great way that we're going to be practicing today is to tune into the senses and put down what we see and hear and touch and smell and taste. We look closer at the fine details. So I have often these little loops that I use in my classes, and I use them personally too. This is my son and I nature journaling, and we use magnifying tools to look closer at the fine details. You know, we might think we know something. We might see a tree and the brain just says tree, grass, shrub, you know, and it's a form of plant awareness disparity, like Tania's talked about in the past. And we don't really see it. And if we get into this mindset of finding details that we haven't noticed, we can begin to see the details on a leaf, the detailed shape of that particular shrub, whatever it might be. And there's 3 really common prompts that nature journalers use, and they are to notice things that I notice, I wonder, questions you might have, and it reminds me of. And this is all about connections. So things that you've experienced in the past, memories, these beautiful ways that you can bring in connections. So that's another way of starting a nature journal page. I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me of. And I've put there ask questions, because questions are a huge part of nature journaling. When we begin to wonder about things, questions come up. Why is this the way it is? Why is it that color? Why is it moving in this way? And you'll notice when you switch into this questioning mode that the questions are infinite. So I'm going to show you a few of my nature journal pages. This one is something I did in the refrigerator, and I wanted to show you this because as I said, nature journaling, you can look at something that you thought you knew in a new way. And this one was done during the height of the COVID times last year, and I just had so much fun with this. I picked out, all the half rotten foods from my fridge. And I studied them under the microscope. And look at that cauliflower and broccoli, a comparison. These aren't things that you necessarily pay attention to, but when you get into this nature journaling mindset, they become so interesting and so fascinating. There's another page here, a rotting mung bean sprout. I don't know why I had so many rotting things in my fridge. And a cross section of an apple and the apple seed sprouting, and these things become so interesting. And you can see that I've got here words, pictures, and numbers, and the numbers can be in the form of measurements or counts, and pictures. So you can see how they're all working together in different ways, documenting different parts of what I'm seeing. Here's a little exploration of a moss I did, and this one's got a life cycle there and different microscopic details. And this is a study of a plant that I found in my backyard. And you can see how you can really go into one plant. You can deeply begin to understand one plant. So I did a little cross-section, dissection of the pod, and I've done the flower from different views. And then again, a more detailed section. And you can even do it with your pets. This is a little hen in the backyard. And so I just show you these to show you that there's a whole suite of things that you can nature journal. So what I want us to do together today is to nature journal in a mangrove habitat. So what I want you to do is just a few minutes. It's about a mangrove habitat near me, and I want you to see if you can drop into a place of using your senses to experience this habitat. So see if you can notice what you can see and what you can hear, and you won't be able to smell it, but maybe you could imagine the salty air. And I'm just going to play it through, and then we're going to nature journal it together. And see how important water is in this habitat. Mangrove seeds, mangrove shoots. A very dynamic habitat. Sound of the tinkling shells. I love this so much. And where the water meets the estuary is an important place as well. Water moving swiftly over rocks. And barnacles on everything. Shells and stones, even tree trunks. Animals living through the environment, using it in different ways. And these amazing roots that spread out. And you can touch nature, and you can experience it with the body. Shells on the substrate, mangrove seeds, the water everywhere. And the water cycle, the clouds on the sea interacting in a cycle. And when you start to look, life everywhere. Shells coming to life with hermit crabs. This little crab doing some spring cleaning. This is me and my boy journaling again. So what I've put here, experiencing water through the senses. And this is a little landscape. This is to show the importance of the barnacles everywhere. And barnacles use water as part of their life cycle. So a barnacle is sedentary in what we sort of think of as the barnacle, but it has a life stage where it needs water to get to the next place. So I was reflecting on that, and how water is so important in this ecosystem for all the different elements of it. So one thing you can do with nature journaling, a great way to add numbers is to do counts. So I saw 5 crows, I saw 2 ibis, and this is a little, so using words and pictures to document that moment where the crab darted out and chucked out all this sediment. I don't know what it was doing, but I wish I had more time to sit and watch it. But so I just wrote, when I crouched down and looked at the silty substrate, it came to life with creatures. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. It was just very, very shallow water. And I sat down to just check it out, see if I could get some footage of it. And it was like one of those magic eye pictures where you have to tune in and then suddenly you see everything. And there was so much movement. It was as if the whole substrate was alive and this intensely busy place, like this little city. And I was looking literally in, just 10 by 10 centimeters square, and just all this activity was happening. This tiny crab darted out from behind the wisp of algae with a claw load of silt and deposited it a few centimeters away, spread it around, and then darted back to hide. So there's all this intense, amazing stuff that we can see when we stop to look. So what I'm going to do is just go through a little bit of nature journaling. So I've left this little box here because with nature journaling, we often start with what's called metadata. And the metadata is the place you are, the date, the time, the weather. All this stuff is really important for nature journaling when you want to look back. And there's been a few times when I haven't put the date or these little pieces of metadata. And you might not think they're important, but they really are important. So what I'm going to do, because the reason is, it anchors you to a time and place. And so if you put the date, you can remember what season it was, what year it was, what was happening. And these things can be important when you're looking back. So what I'm going to do, now this is interesting because my date right now is different from your date. And this video of the mangrove was recorded earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the date when I recorded the information, the video, because that's what we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to, and I write the date differently from you because I write the day and then the month. So the 8th of June 2021, it was 11:30 a.m. when I videoed this little crab and all this stuff in the mangroves. And you can put other stuff, date, time, weather. Weather's important. And with weather, I just do a little symbol. And on this day, it was particularly cloudy. So I'm just going to do a few clouds. And they were quite, they were kind of dark. So I'm just going to darken the clouds. So that's an easy way to record the weather. And you can put other stuff down like sunrise, sunset. Some people go all out with the metadata. And one thing that I think is important for this particular page is the high and low tide, because it gives you a lot of information about what was going on right at that moment. So I've looked this up and I'm going to write the 4 numbers. So low tide, the first low tide was 2:23 a.m. on this particular day, and high tide was 7:59, and the second low tide was after I was there, so the tide wasn't quite at its lowest when I was there. 2:13 p.m. and high 8:40 p.m. So that's metadata. So the next thing I want to do is just experience this, go through what I experienced with my senses in this habitat. So I'm going to start with the taste because I didn't actually taste anything in this habitat. You can taste things when you know it's safe, and I don't know much about tasting anything in a mangrove habitat, so I didn't. But I was reflecting on tasting salty water. I love being in the ocean and tasting the salty water. I have this weird habit of taking a little gulp whenever I'm swimming in the ocean. So I'm just going to write here salty water. I didn't taste it on that particular day, but it was reminding me of that. And I'm going to go up. So smell. I could smell the salty air. Do you know that smell when you're just close to the water, and it just has this very particular salty smell. So that's what I was smelling. And with nature journal, you can just document it in whatever way you want. So I like to just put a line, put a little note. So salty air. And I could smell mud. It's a very muddy place, and especially where I was walking, it was sort of bringing up the mud smells when I was standing on the muddy substrate. And this really sounds weird, but I could smell birds. There is a particular bird that you saw on the video called ibis, and they're very smelly. So I could smell birds on that particular day. What could I hear? I could hear the clank of those shells. I just loved it when I was touching the shells and they were wet, again with the water, and I could hear them tinkling, and it reminded me of a beautiful wind chime or something like that. So I could hear the clank of the shells. I could hear the sound of the waves, and the waves were very small, but it was a rhythm. So I'm going to write small waves. What could I feel? When I touched the water, it was really cool, and it just sort of covered my hand in this lovely way. So I'm going to write cool water on my hand. And I actually got down and I put my hands in the mud as well, so I could feel the mud. And I could feel other things, on my skin. It's really lovely to actually just be really tactile with nature, and you get a lot of different information by doing that you might not have had. The next thing, so I saw birds feeding, interacting with the environment. And thinking about the water, I saw reflections. I noticed that there was different types of water, and I'll go into that in a minute. I just wanted to write also here, animals using water as their habitat. Animals using, I'm running out of space. My nature journals are very much squished with all the little elements also